Hello one all, it's Dr. Stone, chapter 127, same time, same place. And we open up with Dr. X using a lot of the same words Senku did to describe the petrification beam, how he figured out using the swallow population, how he used Twitter and other social media mentions, and wow, he really is Senku's teacher, he figured out the exact same way he did. Only for him then to correct me and explain, no, I didn't figure out any of this, a high schooler in Japan did. That means Senku was literally the only person in the world who was able to put this together, was able to realize the true dangers of all the swallows turning into stones. They were in fact really the swallows, not just some weird art piece. And quite frankly, I kind of wish Dr. X had invited Senku along. It was his discovery. He had every right to be there. Obviously not the CDC where they're trying to dissect this thing, but the DARPA Tech Expo was open to the entire public, so he could have certainly sent him an invitation. And quite frankly, I hope we see that at some point. Don't forget way back when Suksa kind of killed Senku, we got this whole flash oh, what if we had been friends? What if we had grown up together? What if we had worked together to work on your rocket? I want the same thing for this. I want, at the end of this arc, for Dr. X to wonder, Senku, what would have happened if I had sent you an invitation to the Tech Expo and then seeing, Senku and him waking up together, rebuilding America together? How far they could have gone if they'd actually worked together. I think it'd be really cool to say. Anyway, then we get some actual information on the stone statues. It's about time. Apparently, all the internal organs are inside the statue, which, that's great and all, but we haven't actually seen that, ever. I know, there's only so much you can draw, but they're straight confirming that there are internal organs inside these statues we just have not seen. That's a little sad about that, Boichi. You could have done some really disturbing, grotesque. I get why, Boichi didn't draw it that way. Not only would it be incredibly, possibly hard to do, but it would just look very, very disturbing and turn this into a body horror manga instead of, a fun science series. They also say that it repels all water, which certainly makes a lot of sense. I mean, that does explain why, the stone statues are still kicking around thousands of years later, while the Golden Gate Bridge is turning to dust. Yeah, there's some weathering and wear down over time, but these statues have held up remarkably well, and it makes sense, that's because they're actually repelling water. As for composition, they're made of iron, gold, carbon, and nitrogen, which, interesting, I'm fairly certain the human body is made of different things than that. I know we're mostly made of carbon, but we got a whole lot more in us than just iron, gold, carbon, nitrogen, so kind of curious where the rest of the elements are. And when exposed to nitric acid, a minuscule ion discharge is created. Which, very curious exactly what that means. I mean, nitric acid, what unpetrifies them, so kind of curious the scientific explanation for exactly how that works. Also, very interesting line here, the hardness varies considerably, moving from the core to the outer edges, with the finer parts being the hardest. I have no idea how that would actually work, but it does make a lot of sense, if the fine, thin parts were incredibly weak or fragile, they're the same material as the harder parts, or the same material as the harder parts, they would break very easily, and then, the neck or the wrist would just fall off. But because the thin parts are extra hard, that means that, it's more likely to stay intact than if they were all the same density. Another great shot of the Earth and the Moon. I think that's supposed to be representing Senku and Dr. X doing their own thing, each of them doing their own research on different ends of the Earth, maybe? Not sure. Anyway, we flash back to the very first chapter as Taiju announces he's going to confess his love to Yuzu. And Senku is making gasoline, actually out of the stone statue. I either forgot about that or that's the first time I'm hearing that. Very interesting. So he was doing a whole carbon chain distribution read on the stone statue to figure out exactly what it's made of, what it's composed of. Very interesting. Anyway, then we flash over to the DARPA Tech Expo where they're going to explain the stone phenomenon. And we definitely see a few interesting faces. First off, Stanley is part of the elite military unit that was called in at the last minute to be part of this whole thing. We see some other members of his band, including Olga. So yeah, likely means there are a whole lot of other, elite super soldiers also guarding Dr. X right now. And even though Stanley might be the best of them, that's a little worrying. Six's team went to go take them out. Don't think it'll be that easy. I mean, Olga was strong, but she's basically a Marine. So, yeah, that's going to be a very tough fight even for Suksa and the rest of them to take on. And then Dr. X just brings out the bird he's keeping in his pocket. Everyone's like, Dr. X, that's secret. We can't let anyone know about this. Yeah, literally every swallow on the planet was turned to stone. That's not the kind of thing you can keep secret for all that long. He even says, they're gonna, even Strafe says, it's gonna leak out very quickly once we give the full explanation tomorrow, so let's just tell everyone now. Then we see Carlos and Max flirting with Luna. Absolutely no freaking idea what the heck she's doing here. I mean, she's clearly not in military uniform, so maybe she's like the daughter of a general or something. I mean, this is a tech expo. Maybe she's like a model or something, like a booth babe for whatever it is they're trying to show off. I don't know. I really don't know. What is your role, Luna? Who the frick are you? And then the petrification beam hits and Stanley gives the order, whatever you do, don't let your mind fade! And it's very interesting that even for these trained soldiers, they can't hold on. Even knowing that they have to hold on, even knowing they have to stay awake or they will straight up die, they're unable to do it. So there's something special about people that can survive this, that can weather it. I said before, but this definitely feels like a test to decide who's worthy of inheriting the new world. And somehow Luna passes the test by saying over and over again, I'm Luna, I'm the smoothest operator, I'm Luna, the capable girl. And that somehow works for 3,000 years while Carlos and Max are just, saying over and over again how they won't let Luna die single. So they need to stay awake for that. Okay, that's enough for them, I guess. I mean, for Stanley, that's no freaking problem. He's a Marine, he's a commander, he has sniper training. This is simple for him. Staying awake, staying conscious, it's what he does. It's what he's doing right now while in the sniper nest, Staying completely focused on the target as hours and hours and hours go by. Also, I just have to ask, does this pose he has of overlooking Dr. X, does it look tender? Loverly? Because this doesn't feel like he's just protecting him. It feels like he's guarding him, like he has actual feelings for Dr. X. That might just be a complete shot in the dark, but it's definitely the sense I'm getting as I'm looking at these two like this. I'm not sure. It's definitely kind of weird. And I am quite bothered by the fact that the chapter actually straight out says that Senku and Dr. X woke up on the same day. I know it's like, they use the same amount of energy, but I feel like there are so many factors involved with that. Not just, how much energy they used, how much nitric acid in the soil, how much it's covering them, how much this, how much that, how much everything. To the point where they could have said, they woke up a week apart. They woke up a month apart. And I would have been like, alright, that's fine. But say on the same day, in the span of 3,000 freaking years, that just feels a little too on the nose for me. I mean, you get why they're doing it. They want to make us have comparisons between Senku and Dr. X, see what they both managed to accomplish over this time, and, which of them is a better scientist, and I mean, quite frankly, I don't know what the right answer is right now. I mean, if you think about it, Senku spent the whole first year being revived, perfecting the revival fluid, something that Dr. X not only doesn't have, but hasn't even conceived up to this point. From there, he spent the next 6 months to a year working on the sulfa drug, something I'm sure Dr. X has at this point, but, it wasn't a high priority for him. It wasn't something he needed to get done before he get anything else done. And yes, Senku made a lot of scientific advancements while making the drug, but certainly wasn't the most efficient way to go about all that. I mean, after that, Senku, had a freaking war against Tsukasa. I know that didn't take too long, but that definitely took up a bit of time, building the tank and all that. And from there, he had to go to Treasure Island, literally conquer an entire freaking island to get platinum. Meanwhile, Dr. X, on the other hand, he had platinum right off the bat. I mean, I didn't realize this the first time I read this chapter, but then I realized that Carlos said that the ring he got Luna was a platinum ring, and he swallowed it. I was very confused by this for a while, but then I realized, that means that as soon as Dr. X wakes up Carlos, all he needs to do is, dig around in his droppings, and he has the platinum he needs to make all the nitric acid he wants. I mean, he can literally revive as many people as he wants. He also has the corn, the yellow dent corn, which finally we got some confirmation on that. He does confirm that the corn that he woke up with was an inferior hybrid, but there were still some yellow dent kernels buried underground he was able to use to dig up and make flourish again. So that finally answers the freaking question about how there's still, yellow dent corn 3,000 years in the future. I do just love I spent so much time trying to figure out, how they were going to get the yellow dent corn in the future. And the author, he spent just as much time on it. He really put the effort into it. I really like that. I really, really do. I mean, even straight up says, that the other scientists will realize the necessity of Quarren, they'll be drawn to it. And thus he'll be able to take over, he'll be able to conquer the world of science because he has the thing that they all want. And you also can't forget the fact that it was straight up said this chapter that looks like we've got a who's who America's top-notch superheroes. Yeah, they literally have the best of the best, the smartest, the strongest, all the best people right here, right now for the quote-unquote Tech Expo. So Dr. X literally has the best people possible to create a whole new world together. So he had a huge head start over Senku, and literally every advantage you could want. Corn, platinum, manpower. But I don't necessarily think that means that Senku is an inferior scientist to him. I mean, certainly Dr. X is more experienced, but Senku, created the revival fluid. He has a freaking battleship they managed to build with mostly people who had no understanding of what a battleship was, or physics, or the Earth was round. Yeah, he seriously had to explain to these people the Earth was round. I mean, if you swap these two, if Senku had been the one at the Tech Expo, and if Dr. X had woken up near Ishigami Village, I think it's fairly safe to say that Dr. X would not have done well. I feel like his personality, even with all the science stuff, would not have gone over well with the Ishigami Village, and he would have probably been killed. Senku's a kid, so I'm not sure how much he could, influence these trained soldiers and everything, but I mean, with all the resources he has there, I think he could definitely succeed and create a kingdom of science nearly equal to Dr. X, even without, the absolute faith that the soldiers have in him. Just an interesting thought experiment. So yeah, this is definitely a really intense chapter, and I expect the flashbacks are going to continue into next week, because quite frankly, there's still a lot I want to see about how Dr. X started up his kingdom, how he built this giant freaking castle. I mean, they went out of their way to show Carlos swallowing the platinum ring, so I'm going to assume at the very least we're going to see that next chapter of him, vomiting the ring back up, or however he does it, to give it to Dr. X so that he can mass-produce nitric acid and free everyone who is worthy, everyone who's capable from their stone imprisonment very quickly. I mean, seriously, depending on how long it takes him to wake up Carlos, which, I can't imagine Carlos is like a top priority for him. I still have no idea who the heck he is. I have no idea who Luna is in this grand scheme of things, but I can't imagine, he's considered top priority unless Dr. X saw him swallow the platinum ring. I mean, maybe he's the number 1 pick, number 2 after Stanley, but otherwise it could take a while to, get around to waking him up. And then once he gets him, the platinum ring, he gets everyone else up, he figures out that not everyone can be woken up. It's a question of, who stays awake, which, really though, I have to ask, what is different about this bird? I mean, seriously, this one bird is the only one that managed to, not fall into a sleep-like state. Why? What makes a bird different from another bird that he doesn't, that he can handle the, essentially being in a stone coma? A lot of questions about that. But, alright, so yeah, gonna wake up Carlos, gonna get the platinum ring, gonna wake up everyone else, and then start building his whole kingdom of science. I would actually like to see him finding the yellow dent corn, just because, I've spent so much time theorizing over how that would come about, so for them to actually show, it would be, it would feel very rewarding after all the time I spent thinking about it. But please, let me think all this down below. Senku versus Dr. X. Who's the better scientist? Who accomplished more in their time? Who overcame more? If they had switched places, who would have done better? And what do you think would have happened if Senku had gotten the invitation to Tech Expo? If he had gone there and teamed up with Dr. X and they had, woken up essentially at the same time, what could they have accomplished? I think it'd be really cool if they actually showed that, but let me think all this down below. Be sure to like and subscribe to this next video, and until then,
peace.